Hello everybody, my name is Lori, and this is a Minnesota backyard where we look at the small joys and simple wonders found right in our own backyard. Well, it's late March in Minnesota, and we have a lot of sunshine today, and the snow is mostly off the ground, but don't let any of that fool you. Snow is still on the way and will be on the way for the next several weeks. One of the big harbingers of spring is that ruckus that we're hearing right now from the blackbirds that are coming back into the area and starting to find their homes. So they congregate in great groups and they make quite a lot of noise. And then all of a sudden it'll stop and it'll be silent for a few minutes and then it'll all start right back up. Well, today I'd like to talk about this strip of garden that's behind me. This strip of garden is in between two houses, so it's on a very narrow piece of property. The garden is between 6 feet and maybe 8 feet wide. And this is where I've planted a lot of tall prairie plants. What I have seen over the years is that that area of garden, that narrow strip, is the home of so much activity in the summer. Bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and insects of all varieties come and visit and feed in that area. One of the things we need to protect these days is habitat and biodiversity. And while it's not very possible for all of us to turn our backyards into the native prairie or savanna or woodland that it may have come from, one of the things that really strikes me with this is how much we could possibly do with just 6 feet of prairie. At this time of the year, the garden is looking a bit rough with the old stems and seed heads and the debris from last year. But for right now, it's important not to disturb it because this year's generation of bees and other insects and butterfly larvae are overwintering in this debris and in the stems. The hardest job is to do nothing, and that's what we're going to do. Now, before long, this 6 feet of prairie will spring to life and be a haven for birds and bees and butterflies and other insects. Native plants that are native to your area, will attract wildlife. So as long as you are selecting plants that are best adapted for your particular soil and water and light conditions, you won't go wrong. By July, the prairie garden is in full swing with lots of flowers in bloom. This is bee balm, and as the name suggests, it is very attractive to bees. Over time, bee balm forms these clumps that fill in an area. I've also found that the old stems of bee balm are some of the favorite places for cavity-dwelling bees to make their nests. There are hundreds of species of native bees coming in all shapes and sizes. At one end of the scale is the American bumblebee. See her busily grooming her abdomen with her rear legs while she's taking a sip of nectar. On the opposite end of the size scale, these tiny yellow-faced bees enjoy the pollen and nectar from a swamp milkweed flower. The bees come not only for nectar, but for pollen, which they gather and they feed to their growing young. Bees are not the only thing attracted to the prairie. This tiger swallowtail butterfly helps itself to nectar in this red bee balm. The red bee balm is also very enticing to hummingbirds. Here is a visitor that can be mistaken for a hummingbird at a quick glance because of its rapid wing beat and hovering behavior. However, this hummingbird clearwing moth mostly visits once the sun has started to go down. The Nessus sphinx moth is another visitor at dusk. Notice its bold striped pattern, reminiscent of a bee at a quick glance. In addition to moths, butterflies, and bees, my 6 feet of prairie attracts other beneficial insects that help to keep garden pests at bay. The jagged ambush bug lies in wait for insect pests on this coneflower. Look at its strong forearms, which are designed for grabbing and holding its prey. This is the minute pirate bug, and as its name suggests, it's small, but its bite can pack a punch. These insects are powerful allies in controlling pests like thrips, but they will take on larger insects like this bee. Assassin bugs are another beneficial insect that helps to control pests and sometimes, unfortunately, an occasional bee. Soldier beetles eat pollen and nectar like this fella is doing on this ironweed, but they also eat soft-bodied insects like aphids, making them another important ally in pest control. The long appendage on the rear of this braconid wasp is not a stinger, but an ovipositor used to lay eggs. These are parasitic wasps, and they lay their eggs in the bodies of soft-bodied caterpillars, such as cabbage worms, tomato hornworms, and other garden pests. Just like native bees, native wasps come in a variety of shapes and sizes. This typhid wasp enjoys nectar from this bone set. The great golden digger is one of the larger species of wasps. Besides its size and color, you can notice it by the characteristic snapping action its wings make. On the other end of the size spectrum is the tiny thread-waisted wasp. It's easy to see how this species gets its name. Many native wasps are solitary, living in burrows underground and preying on other insects, such as beetles and crickets and caterpillars. The wasp paralyzes their prey, drags them into their burrows, and lay their eggs on them. When the eggs hatch, the wasp larvae have a meal waiting for them. As we have seen, 6 feet of prairie can provide a lot of nectar and pollen for insects. Insects and seeds help to support birds. There are 3 finches in this frame. Can you spot them all? There is always something new to see in the prairie. As we've seen, it is literally buzzing with life. So thank you everybody for joining me, and I hope you can join me again.